starting in Exodus chapter 15, verses 1 through chapter 16, verses 36, the Song of Moses and Miriam. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. This is after they had passed through the Red Sea. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, the horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger, and it consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood firm like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them. I will divide the spoils. I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall upon them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, O Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, your hands established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea, the waters of Morah and Elim. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea and then went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding any water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That's why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, What are we to drink? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. Here, I'm going to highlight this. He tested them. If you think that God is going to bring you into your promised land without testing you, you are sadly mistaken. The Lord will test you. He will test your faith. He will test, do you trust him? Are you going to do what he tells you to do? Even if it's like, think about this. You're in the desert. You're traveling for 3 days. You're thirsty. You can't find any water. The only water you found is bitter. Mind you, you've been listening to the Lord. A lot of people are like, well, I was listening to the Lord. How am I in this place that's really confusing and hard to navigate? It's like it's not like they were being disobedient to God. They were following God, and yet they were still thirsty. And then they stumbled upon this water that was bitter. And then Moses thought, let me pray to God. And God said, here's this piece of wood. Throw it into the water. I often ask you guys, would you have done it? Would you have thrown the wood into the water? Because so many times God will hand you your piece of wood and you're going to stand there. So many people stand there like, how is this going to mean that? And so many people refuse to even put their wood in the water, right? Because they're just like, they can't conceive how God could make a miracle happen. So anyway, God is going to test you. God is 100% going to test you to see if you're obedient, to see if you're going to do what he tells you to do, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's illogical, even when there's no way on earth that what he's asking you to do could lead to what you're asking him for, but he still wants to see if you're going to do it. So he said, if you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped out there near the water. So they were traveling, they were thirsty, he tested them. I'm assuming they passed the test, because right on the other side of that test, they went from dying of thirst to 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Moving forward. Manna and quail. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. So I'm going to pause here because we are the Israelites, okay? When you read the Bible, do not put yourself in the seat of the hero, because Jesus is the hero and you are the Israelite, okay? How often, maybe this is just me, maybe I'm ungrateful, but I feel like I experience this a lot, and I experience a lot of people who feel the same way. It's like, you might have just received a miracle, but let you endure a hardship and suddenly you're going to be questioning God again. And it's like the Israelites are constantly in this cycle of big, crazy miracle. And then it's like, oh my gosh, but let them encounter something hard. It's like they forgot all about God's miracle. And here they are whining again, And it's like, this is almost human nature. This is human nature to me, right? It's like you'll have a big miracle from God. You'll be on cloud nine. You'll be drinking the water. And then it's like the second something doesn't go your way, you're whining and grumbling again. And look at the way they're, like idolizing the past. Maybe idolizing is the wrong word, but they're reflecting back on their past time in Egypt. Like, oh, we had all the meat we could ever want in Egypt. Yeah. And the Egyptians was killing your kids, And it's like, you're over here, they're idolizing the past. They're making it this nostalgic thing. Like, oh, it was so good in Egypt. You should have just left us there. Left you there for what? To die? Like, come on now. Don't think about your past. Don't romanticize your past in this way where you're only seeing the good and not the bad. Don't romanticize your past in this way where you're only seeing the good and not the bad, because they're encountering this tiny little hardship. Even though God just provided a miracle for them, they just crossed the Red Sea, and then he just turned the water from bitter to sweet. And yet they're like, their first reaction when they're hungry, instead of going to the Lord and asking for food, their first reaction is to grumble and complain to Moses. Anyway, moving forward. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. He is testing them again. He's telling them, only grab enough for today. I want to see if you're going to follow my instructions. On the 6th day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, because he's like, stop grumbling to me. I'm not God. I'm just Moses. You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord, because they're complaining to Moses, and he's like, we're not God. You're grumbling to me as if I'm the one in control, but I'm not the one in control. God's in control. Then Moses said to Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites, and tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening, quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one is to gather as much as he needs. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little, and then they measured it by the omer. He who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. And it's like, he's angry because they're hoarding it because they're doubting God's provision. This is an act of faith. To only gather what you need for that day is an act of faith. Because it shows that you trust that God is going to provide for you again tomorrow. And so by disobeying God and trying to hoard it until the next day, they're showing that, God, we don't really trust you. Even after all you've done, even after splitting the Red Sea and bringing the water and all of the miracles and plagues, even after all that we've seen you do, we still don't trust you. That's why we're going to hoard this little bit of bread. Okay? So Moses was angry with them for hoarding the bread. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. They did this, you guys, so that they could take a Sabbath. The only day they were allowed to take 2 times as much was on the 6th day, because on the 7th day they were supposed to rest in the presence of God. He said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Again, they're still not listening. They're still not listening. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath, and that is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. He's like, how long? Oh my gosh, you can't even take 1 day to rest? How long? What's it going to take for you to listen to me? Oh my Lord. How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath, and that is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where he is on the 7th day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so that they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt. So Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, and then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna in front of the testimony that it may be kept. The Israelites ate manna 40 years. until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is a tenth of an ephah. I would love to see that. I wonder where that jar of manna is today, because you know it's still around. I would love to see the jar of manna today. Also, how amazing God gave them something that tasted like it was sweetened with honey. He could have given them anything, and he still gave them something sweet. You know, it's like when you're starving, you'll take anything. But God, even when he knows you would settle for anything, he still gave you something sweet. I love that. But the Israelites are interesting to me. They're very irritating, but at the same time, very relatable. But it's like, you know, how much is it going to take for them to listen? You know, it's like, God, you've seen so many miracles, and yet you still don't listen. You still doubt. You still don't trust that God's going to provide for you. You're still living in fear. You're still hoarding every little thing. It's like, I know so many people that are like that even still today. It's like, what's it going to take? What is it going to take for you to believe? What is it going to take for you to walk in trust instead of in fear and in doubt? It's like, how many times is God going to have to show up for you? How many times? Moving forward, our New Testament reading for today is Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 20, the resurrection. After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord had come down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. They froze. That's interesting. They shook and became like dead men. They didn't actually die, but I imagine they're catatonic. And if you've ever seen someone catatonic, it's scary. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come, see in the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy. You can be afraid and yet filled with joy at the same time. And ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." This is important because the disciples have to go in faith in order to see Jesus. They can't just stay where they're at. They have to go in faith. It's almost like a test. The guards report, while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. The Great Commission. The 11 disciples went into Galilee to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." So that is all for our New Testament portion of the day. Let's get into our reading from Psalms for today, which is Psalm 21, verses 8 through 13. Your hand will lay hold on all your enemies, and your right hand will seize your foes. At the time of your appearing, you will make them like a fiery furnace. In his wrath, the Lord will swallow them up, and his fire will consume them. You will destroy their descendants from the earth and their posterity from mankind. Though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. for you will make them turn their backs when you aim at them with drawn bow. Be exalted, O Lord, in your strength, and we will sing and praise your might. So that is all for our New Testament portion of the day. Thank you guys for joining our daily Bible study. If you have the goal of reading through the Bible in 1 year, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is prayer_warrior Bible study. Every single day we go live and do this Bible reading plan. And if you tune in every day, you will have read the entire Bible in 1 year. This is our 3rd year doing this Bible study. So we have several people on here today that have already read through the Bible twice and are now reading through it the 3rd time just by simply tuning into our channel. So subscribe to the YouTube. We upload all of the lives over there. If you missed the live, you can catch it over there. And if you had one that you really liked, you can go back and re-listen to it. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day. Happy Valentine's Day.